Turn around, maybe one day you're all that was there.
You know, this should be a nice, quiet part of the offseason for the Timberwolves. We should just be sitting back enjoying LeBron James and the NBA playoffs, which have been as interesting as they can get when none of the games are close. But instead, we have Intrigue. We have Timberwolves Intrigue. We're going to ask Jon Krawczynski of The Athletic about it. This is John's show, You Betcha Basketball Show, the Jon Krawczynski Show, on the talknorth.com podcast network. That's a Minnesota sports podcast network that also mixes in a business show and continues to expand. You can go to talknorth.com to find all the shows. Subscribe at iTunes, subscribe to just this show or the network as a whole, thanks to TSR Injury Law, sodastick.com, and Tony Hoaglund, your State Farm agent in Champlin, for sponsoring this program. We'll tell you more about their businesses later. So, John, we have Intrigue. We have reports that Karl Anthony Towns is not happy. We have continued fan discontent with Tom Thibodeau. I've talked to some people in the Wolves organization the last couple of weeks just to get a feel for what's going on over there. And nothing sounds good.
Yeah, it's interesting. There's one kind of brush fire after another, and some of them have real wood on the stove, and some don't. I mean, there was just a week and a half ago, there was a rumor out there that Tibbs and Layden got in a shouting match, and Tibbs threw a computer through a wall like that. But and I have not confirmed any of that, but then you add the Karl Anthony Towns stuff, and you add, all of these things that are just swirling in it. It just doesn't feel like a very stable situation right now, which is unsettling, coming off of a year that you should feel pretty good about what you accomplished on the court. When you look at the Towns situation, it kind of was bred from just this off-the-cuff conversation on a podcast between two really good NBA guys, Zach Lowe and Brian Windhorst. And I think that in the way that I see it, some of the hysteria is probably over-exaggerated here. I think that there is a disconnect between Towns and Tibbs, as we've been saying all season long. I don't think it's past the point of no return. I don't think he's definitely not going to get traded. So let's just put that out there right now. But it just shows that when something like this that is really harmless and essentially kind of meaningless, just two guys chatting, and the Celtics could make an offer for Karl Anthony Towns, when the hysteria that kind of comes out of it is to the level that it is, it just does show that there is a lot of kind of angst, and there's a lack of kind of confidence in the regime at the top right now, and some of that is probably unfair. I mean, Twitter can be ridiculous, and fans can be unreasonable, and those things.
I never noticed,
but
I'll check into that.
But I will say that I do think that there needs to be a better job done at the top of stabilizing and getting control of things, and kind of projecting more of a sense of calm and of just control, and so far we haven't seen that yet.
Where do you think the rumors of Towns' discontent stem from? Is that usually in this business is usually coming from an agent talking to an agent who then talks to somebody?
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's kind of been building for much of the season, and we could all see during the year that they weren't on the same page. That I don't think necessarily that Towns was always listening to exactly what Tibbs wanted him to do, especially defensively. And I think that Tibbs's approach toward communicating or not communicating with Towns and several other players kind of bred some sort of disconnect of, okay, we're not on the same page type of a feeling. And then we go into the offseason and Tibbs fires Vince LaGarza, who is a guy who has worked closely with Towns since he came into the league, without giving Towns any kind of heads up, which again, it's Tibbs' right, absolutely, to make changes to his staff and to bring in people he thinks are going to do the best job and are that share the same vision and all of those things. But when you're doing that with the favorite of an all-star and a young all-star at that, who certainly has shown a propensity to kind of speak his mind and do and want things done his way, when you do it without communicating with him at all about it, then you ask for trouble. And so I think that there was a little bit of my guess is a little bit of a rift there. Now, I haven't talked to Towns yet about this because he keeps a pretty low profile in the off season. But I would guess that stems from it a little bit as well. And what you hear from players who have any kind of discontent with Tom Thibodeau is he never talks to us. Like, I don't know where we stand. I don't know why he's doing the things that he's doing. And so that's something that has to be remedied. Tom did not do exit interviews at the end of the season. He wanted to wait to give it a few weeks to let everything digest and then go and meet individually with players. But when that happens, it's probably, there's good and bad to it. The bad is that players are thinking, what the heck is going on here? Somebody tell me something. And so I think that's kind of where a lot of it stems from, is generally a lack of communication and a lack of connectedness that that definitely has to change going forward.
As I said, I've talked to a couple people in the organization. I'll tell you what I'm hearing, and we'll compare notes here. First, I want to thank TSR Injury Law, 612-TSR-TIME. Have you been injured and it wasn't your fault? You're going to need help. We can recommend TSR. We know the people. We know Steve Terry and his partners, and they are there. The great thing is everything's very transparent and everything is explained to you in very simple language. You call them. You will speak to a lawyer. They are available at all hours. They will come to you. If we're talking about car crashes, truck crashes, motorcycle crashes, defective products, dog bites, wrongful death, brain injury, neck and back injury. They will handle everything. They only make money in the deal if they win money for you. They are not charging you up front. And as I said, we have gotten to know the people there, and we can recommend them.
This is Steve Terry for TSR Injury Law. If you've been injured in a car crash, it's TSR time. The law firm you choose does make a difference in how the insurance companies treat you. Let them know you demand fairness. Call 612-TSR-TIME for a free consultation. That's 612-TSR-TIME.
So you've been covering the Wolves for a long time. You're well-sourced in the organization. I've been around the organization, but not as a beat writer since about 2004, 2005. So I know some people, but I don't work the beat the way you do. But I called a couple people in the last week when all this stuff started flying. And what they told me was that Taylor is pretty ambivalent about Thibodeau. He recognizes the team's gotten better. He's just not 100% comfortable with how it's gotten better or where it's going. I've heard that Taylor's wife is not a big fan of Tom Thibodeau, really does not like sitting sideline and hearing Tibbs scream and cuss all game. I've heard there is some angst. People I talked to didn't confirm the throwing the computer, story, but they didn't deny it either. They said they weren't. They sounded a little nervous to be talking about it, which might be a confirmation of its own, but it's not the kind of confirmation we need as journalists. But they painted a picture of a really antsy situation. They also told me that Butler is not particularly popular in the organization. He's popular with the Chicago contingent. He's not popular with the group as a whole. So that's what I'm hearing. I'll let you kind of speak to what you've heard.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, one thing that Glenn Taylor has clearly wanted, and sometimes for better and sometimes for worse, with his the people that he works closely with in the Timberwolves organization, is he wants a family atmosphere. He wants a relationship. He wants to feel like a grandpa to the rest of kind of the group, and a constant communication and a running dialogue and bouncing things off of each other and that sort of thing. And so I think that if there is an ambivalence right now, that's where it stems from, is that Tibbs is very much more of a bunkered in type of a person. Scott Layden is the same way. They want to keep things like in-house to a degree that kind of usually is we more associate with NFL franchises than NBA, but he's not a warm and fuzzy guy. And in defense of Tibbs here, this is who he is. Like, he can't be Flip Saunders because it would not come off as genuine. It would come off as phony, and that's just not him. I think that in terms of the relationship there, I think that's one area that needs to be worked on. I mean, as far as Becky goes, I think, we've talked about it here. I know other people have reported it, but there have been several conversations with Tom Thibodeau from people in the organization about trying to calm down the sideline demeanor and the cursing and the just flying off the handle, both at referees and his own players, because it does make people uncomfortable courtside there. Again, that's part of who Tom is, but there's absolutely been efforts to try to get him to tone that down. I think that at times he does, but then you go long enough and you just kind of revert to who you are. So it does make it's not just Becky. I think that they've received many of a complaint about how he goes about his business that way, and from people who sit right around there. Like I have said it before, and I'm not a Pollyanna here. Like, I swear as much as the next person, but there's no way I would take Owen and Nita to sit right there and right in front of Tom Thibodeau. Like, that's just the way that he conducts himself. That way is not for the faint of heart. It's not for little kids, and it's embarrassing at times. It just is. Like, there's you can kind of say, this is pro sports. We're all adults here, all of that stuff. But no, there's a way to conduct yourself as a professional, and he is the only one in the league who goes to those extremes.
And the NBA charges an incredible amount of money so fans can sit right there next to Glenn Taylor, right behind Tom Thibodeau. That's part of the deal in the NBA. This isn't the NFL where you're removed by 40 yards from the stands.
Right, yep. And if you want to be involved and you want to be up and barking things out, that's one thing, but I think it's another thing to JFC and to use the profanity that he does and the language that he does. I've said it before, I cannot believe that he doesn't get a technical foul every single game. It
is amazing. That is an amazing thing. I will say that he has found a way to walk right up to the line, and I think the line for most NBA officials is you can dispute a call, you can yell at me, you can gesticulate, but you can't get personal, and you can't use certain words in the sentence when you're addressing the official directly. And he has magically found a way to walk up to that line and back off just in time.
Well, and I've talked to other coaches about this kind of privately, and there is a little frustration because they believe he gets graded on a curve.
Right.
So because he is so out there, then he can push the envelope further than, I think Eric Spoelstra, at least for a lot of the season, was leading the league in technical fouls. And Eric is like Miami cool guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I mean, he does get into officials and he goes after them and stuff, but not to the level that Tibbs does. And so, I think there is a little bit of frustration with that. So they've had those conversations. They're trying to get him to calm down a little bit, and I think he does for stretches, but then he kind of, just reverts to who we are in moments of when the temperature gets hottest. Finally, I mean, with the computer throwing, I don't think it happened. I'm not saying, I can't say definitively that it didn't, but I can say that I feel pretty confident that if it did happen, I would have known about it. It allegedly did happen during a day where they were working out prospects for the draft. And so if something, to that extent happened, I have to think one of these prospects would have said to the agent,
right,
holy man, like this, there's this big commotion and this big, all this happened. And so it would have leaked out one way or another. Right. And I've talked to agents of players who were there. I've talked to people inside and outside the organization. And even while we know that there are all these kind of rumors that float around about how Tibbs runs things, everyone that I've talked to said, I